You know, there are nights when life doesn't break you loudly. It breaks you quietly. And somehow, that quiet hurts more. I didn't realize that until one night at 11:47 p.m., sitting alone at my kitchen table with a half-cold ceramic mug warming only the first inch of my fingers. The rest of me felt numb, like my body had memorized exhaustion better than it memorized peace. And maybe you've had a moment like that too. That still, heavy moment where everything inside you pauses without asking permission. Have you ever felt that? That strange, fragile stillness that shows up when the world finally stops demanding things from you. The house was silent. The refrigerator hummed. A car rolled by outside, slow, like it didn't want to wake the street. And there I was, staring into a cup I'd refilled all day but couldn't remember actually drinking. The mug had become a kind of symbol for the way I lived, always pouring, rarely receiving. It's funny how an ordinary object can become a mirror when you're tired enough. I remember wrapping both hands around it, trying to feel something warm, something grounding. My fingers were cold, my chest felt hollow, and my mind, God, my mind wouldn't stop buzzing, replaying conversations, reopening old worries, scrolling through to-do lists I hadn't finished. I kept thinking, I should be asleep, I should be resting, I should feel something other than this emptiness. But the truth was, I'd been pretending for so long that I barely knew what I actually needed anymore. Carl Rogers once said something that came back to me in that moment, not in a grand, philosophical way, but like a soft reminder from someone who understood. When I stop pretending I'm fine, I finally hear what I need. The thing is, I had been pretending, not on purpose, not out of pride, just out of survival. I answered emails on time. I hit deadlines. I showed up to group chats with emojis and exclamation points. I laughed at the right moments. I kept my promises even when I was exhausted. On the outside, everything looked okay, but inside, tiny cracks had been forming. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies. No, the quiet kind. The ones you only notice when the noise stops and you're forced to sit with yourself. The ones people online have started calling quiet cracking. A burnout that whispers instead of screams. A leaking of energy you keep telling yourself you'll fix after this week, after this project, after this crisis. But crises don't pause, and neither did I. The mug sat there like a question I didn't want to answer. A reminder of how easily I ignored myself. I lifted it to my lips and almost laughed when I realized I'd forgotten to drink it. Again. It had gone cold hours ago, probably back when I microwaved it at 9:15 p.m. and told myself I'd take a short break. Why do the smallest moments hit the hardest? Why does a cold cup of coffee say more about my life than any diary entry? I took a breath, long and shaky, and for the first time that night, I paid attention. The exhaustion behind my eyes, the knot in my shoulders, the ache in my jaw from clenching all day. My body had been telling the truth long before my mind was willing to. It was then, in that soft, heavy stillness, that I asked myself a question I'd been avoiding for months. Have I been living, or just trying not to fall apart? Silence answered me, a kind of silence that felt too honest to ignore. I looked down at the mug, that ordinary, cracked, overused mug, and the thought came without drama, without panic, without noise. Something's not holding anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't break. I just paused. A deep, human pause. And in that pause, a tiny tremor of truth whispered through me. Small, but sharp enough to hurt. If I don't change something soon, something inside me will change without my permission. That's where the story really begins. If I don't change something soon, something inside me will change without my permission. That thought didn't echo, it just settled, quietly, like dust on a windowsill no one remembers to wipe. I sat there for a long time, staring at that ceramic mug, feeling the weight of a truth I'd been dodging for months. And before I even realized it, morning had arrived, not with sunlight, but with obligations. The next day didn't explode. It didn't fall apart. It just pressed in. A message from my boss at 6:12 a.m., a friend texting, "Do you have time to talk today? It's urgent." A family member calling to ask for just a minute. A deadline that got moved up without warning. A bill that arrived 2 weeks early. Nothing catastrophic. Everything technically manageable. But my chest tightened the way a shoe tightens when the laces are pulled too fast. That's the thing about quiet cracking. It doesn't happen in big, dramatic pieces. It happens in tiny, almost invisible fractures. The kind you don't feel until they hurt to the touch. By 9 a.m., I'd already reread the same email paragraph 3 times. My eyes were moving, but my mind wasn't connecting. I kept scrolling through my phone without remembering what I was looking for. I laughed at a coworker's joke on a call, but my face felt like it belonged to someone else. And when someone asked me, "How are you doing?" I answered automatically, "I'm fine." But the truth was, explaining would have taken energy I didn't have. There's a Kierkegaard line I once underlined in a college library book, back when life felt more like a question than a burden. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. But this didn't feel like freedom. This felt like being trapped in a hallway where every door led to another task, another expectation, another version of me people needed. By noon, the ceramic mug had followed me to my desk. Still there, still half full, still cold. I kept lifting it out of habit, taking small sips that didn't exist. Each time, I felt a little more hollow. And somewhere between meetings, something inside me dipped. Not dramatically, just enough to notice. What people didn't see was the battle happening inside me. Because the hardest part wasn't the pressure. It was what the pressure was turning me into. I was becoming someone who snapped faster. Someone who avoided calls. Someone who couldn't feel joy, even when good things happened. Someone who kept saying, "I'll rest later," like later was a real destination. And I wasn't alone. There was a young mother I knew. 2 jobs, dark circles she tried to hide behind drugstore concealer. She told me once, "I'm so tired, I don't even dream anymore." I still think about that. There was a man in his 40s at my office, dependable, steady, the guy who always volunteered to stay late. One day he stood in the copy room holding a stack of papers and whispered, "I don't know how much longer I can do this." It scared me how much I understood. There was a college student at the cafe near my apartment, typing furiously, eyelids heavy, empty energy drink cans beside her. I overheard her say on the phone, "I don't want to disappoint anyone." She sounded so young, so old, so tired. There was an immigrant cashier at the grocery store who smiled at every customer, even when people were rude. I saw him take a deep breath near the freezer section, pressing his fist against his chest like he was holding something in. Different lives, different backgrounds, same quiet cracking. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But this suffering didn't feel imaginary. It felt lived. It felt earned. It felt like a tax life kept collecting without permission. By early evening, I found myself standing in the bathroom, staring at my reflection the way you look at someone you used to know. And for a moment, a long, honest moment, I didn't recognize the person staring back. My eyes looked tired in a way sleep wouldn't fix. My shoulders slumped like they had forgotten how to carry me. My face looked muted somehow. And then, out of nowhere, the thought surfaced again, clearer, sharper. If I don't change now, I will lose myself. The room was quiet. The mirror was honest. The mug on the counter, the same mug I'd carried all day, was still cold. And the crack inside me wasn't so quiet anymore. And the crack inside me wasn't so quiet anymore. It trembled through me, subtle but certain, like something shifting just beneath the surface. I remember gripping the edge of the bathroom sink, feeling the cool porcelain under my palms while my heartbeat tried to steady itself. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I just stood there, breathing slowly, wondering how long I'd been drifting so far from myself. And maybe you know that feeling too. That silent moment when you realize you've crossed some invisible line inside your own life. I walked out of the bathroom and into the kitchen without turning on the light. The apartment felt different. Still familiar, but heavier somehow. Or maybe I was just finally noticing the weight I'd been carrying. My ceramic mug was still sitting on the counter, a silent witness to every rushed morning and every unfinished night. When I reached for it, the mug slipped. Not dramatically, not in a way that shattered anything, just a small, startled clink against the edge of the counter. A soft sound, barely there, but it was enough to stop me. It was ridiculous, I know, that such a tiny sound could feel like a message, but in that moment, I froze the way you freeze when the universe whispers something you've been too busy to hear. You can't keep pouring when the cracks keep widening. The thought didn't feel poetic. It didn't feel wise. It felt practical, like someone finally telling me the truth in a language I could understand. I stood there with my hand still hovering near the mug, and for the first time in months, something inside me softened. My breath deepened. My shoulders dropped a little. It wasn't relief. It wasn't clarity. It was just a gentle shift, small enough to miss, big enough to matter. I don't have to be strong in the same way I used to be, I whispered. Not to the room, not to anyone else, to myself. Strength didn't have to mean pushing, didn't have to mean pretending, didn't have to mean performing okay when I wasn't. It could be quiet, soft, preserving, human. I remembered a line from John Kabat-Zinn I once heard in a mindfulness class years ago. A line that floated back like a calm tide rolling in. You can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf. Maybe that was it. Maybe the problem wasn't the waves. Maybe it was the way I'd been fighting them, rigid, exhausted, trying to outrun something that was never meant to be outrun. So I tried something tiny, the smallest thing. I took one slow breath before moving again. Just one. I didn't scroll my phone for the next hit of distraction. I didn't check my email just in case. I didn't tell myself I was behind. I just breathed. And in that breath, something shifted, like the first crack in a long winter lake letting in a thread of warm light. From there, the changes weren't dramatic. They weren't Instagram-worthy. They were small, almost embarrassingly small. I said, "Give me a moment," without apologizing. I answered fewer texts. I finished one task, just one, before starting another. I stretched my shoulders before I sat down. I turned off notifications after 8 p.m. I let myself feel tired without judging it. I listened when my body whispered, "Enough." Little steps, small shifts, slow refills. Some days I slipped back into old habits, rushing, overperforming, ignoring myself. Those days hurt more, but they taught me something too. Progress isn't loud. Growth isn't glamorous. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a rhythm, a practice, a gentle discipline. And through it all, the mug became something different. It wasn't just a symbol of exhaustion anymore. It became a reminder to refill myself slowly. A reminder that warmth takes time. A reminder that being held together doesn't mean being unbreakable. Some mornings, before touching my phone, I'd wrap my hands around it and let the heat seep into my palms. No rushing, no forcing, just holding something warm the way I wished I could hold my own life. There was a quote I scribbled on a sticky note one morning, something simple, something I wasn't sure I believed yet. Clarity arrives when you treat yourself with patience. I stuck it on the fridge. Later, I wrote the same line on a page of my notebook. Eventually, I started to feel it in my body. A subtle warmth, like a low flame returning after being dim for too long. One day, while walking to the bus stop, I caught myself breathing slower. My shoulders weren't as tense. The morning air felt different. So did the way I stepped into it. Have you ever felt your shoulders drop without knowing why? That moment when something inside you unclenches, not because everything is fixed, but because something finally gave you permission to rest. That's what this phase felt like. Not a finish line, not a transformation, just a beginning. "I'm not healed," I wrote in my journal one night. "I'm simply walking differently now." And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the kind of quiet strength that holds. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's the kind of quiet strength that holds. I sat with that thought for a long while, letting it settle in my chest the way warm water settles in a cup. The night was soft around me. The apartment hummed with the low, familiar quiet I used to drown out with busyness. And I realized, maybe for the first time, that the world wasn't asking me to prove anything in that moment. It was just asking me to be here, breathing, present, human. Here's what I remember now. I didn't wake up one morning magically healed. I didn't rise like some new version of myself. No sunrise came with triumphant music. What really happened was slower, quieter. The way a bruise fades without you noticing, or the way a tired plant perks up after a little water. Healing came in the smallest, humblest moments. Like the morning I opened my window before opening my phone, and the cold air hit my face in a way that made me feel alive again. Or the afternoon I walked past a store window, caught my reflection, and didn't wince. Or the night I laughed, genuinely, for the first time in weeks, and realized I'd missed the sound of my own joy. And the mug, that old ceramic mug, it kept showing up in places I didn't expect. Some mornings, I'd hold it with both hands like it was something fragile I'd promised to take care of. Some nights, it sat on the table with steam rising gently, reminding me that warmth doesn't rush. Sometimes I'd forget it in the microwave, again, and smile at the familiarity of it. Not with shame, not with frustration, just with this quiet, human fondness. Like recognizing an old part of myself I wasn't angry at anymore. Looking back, I think what stayed with me most wasn't a big lesson. It was a small truth. I had been waiting for my life to get easier, when what I really needed was to get gentler with myself. There's a tenderness in admitting that, a fragility, a kind of honesty that feels like taking off heavy armor you forgot you were wearing. And with that tenderness came clarity. Slow, steady, trustworthy clarity. The clarity that I didn't have to answer every message right away. That I didn't need to carry every disappointment alone. That I could say, "Not tonight," and still be a good friend. That rest wasn't laziness. That silence wasn't failure. That change wasn't a betrayal of who I used to be. One evening, after a long day that didn't break me the way it used to, I sat at the table again. The same table, the same soft light, the same ceramic mug, warm this time. And as I wrapped my hands around it, the thought arrived. Simple, almost shy. Maybe the person I'm becoming deserves as much care as the person I've been trying to save. There was no dramatic music, no cinematic transformation, just a slow exhale, the kind that releases something you've been carrying for years. I let that breath stay with me. And here's something small, something you can try tonight if you want. Try this tonight. Sit with your cup in silence for 1 minute. 1 minute where you're not performing, not pushing, not pretending, just breathing, just noticing, just being. You don't need to solve anything in that minute. You don't need to fix your whole life. You don't need to become a different person. Just listen to the softness, to the honesty, to the quiet truth inside you that's been waiting patiently. Because healing, it's not fireworks. It's not a breakthrough. It's not a loud epiphany. It's the kettle hissing softly in the kitchen. It's the mug warming your hands. It's the rain tapping gently against the window. It's the moment you choose yourself in the smallest possible way, and then choose yourself again tomorrow. I don't know where you are in your story. I don't know what kind of cracks you're carrying, but I do know this. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to breathe. You're allowed to change your pace without apologizing. You're allowed to begin again, even if the beginning is quiet. And somewhere, maybe tonight, maybe weeks from now, you'll feel it. That soft returning, that gentle warmth, that little spark of strength rising quietly from the center of your own life. And when it happens, even if for just a second, I hope you notice it. I hope you hold it the way I held that mug, with both hands, with an open heart, and with the simple, unwavering belief that you deserve a life that doesn't break you quietly. Because you do. You truly do.